Hey everyone, welcome to my video. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different with my videos, and I'm going to do some commentary over my time lapse. This time lapse is going to be about an hour long. I won't be talking over the entire thing, but I'm just going to jump in at certain points and talk about what I'm doing. So here I am, just working on my underpainting here. For my underpaintings, I typically do the brightest brights, the darkest darks, and then kind of mid-tones at the same time. Um, I do have a light sketch on the board, which you can't really see in the video, but I do have a sketch, and I have digital reference that I follow, um, multiple references I use. So when I'm doing my layering, what I try to think of color-wise is just building it from the bottom up is kind of how you have to think of it. Like what's under all of that, which is why I like the red underpainting, because that's what's under all of it, really. You'll see the warmth of the red. Even if you can't really see it, it's still there. I will show you eventually. I'm working on some pieces right now with brown backgrounds. I normally do my red, but I did a couple with a raw sienna color. When I get that done, I can compare how the red looks versus how the brown looks. I can already tell that the brown one that I'm doing is almost warmer in a more yellowy kind of bright way. The red ones are a little more harsh, but I'll show you guys when we get to that point. So the paints that I use, I currently am just using Liquitex Basics acrylics for my main paints. Pretty standard colors, really. I go with all the primaries. So basically, yeah, a lot of my underpainting is more whites and blacks and darks, and then I kind of go in with some light color, and then I kind of build off of those base colors. As I go along, besides the Liquitex paints right here, this red that you're seeing on the cheeks is golden fluid acrylics. They are very thin. Some of them are thicker than others, but very opaque, pigmented colors that are beautiful, that I really love to layer with. And that's kind of how I get my layered look the way it is by using these specific paints. So if you want to try to get that look with a glaze, I highly recommend the Goldens. They can be quite expensive if you're buying a lot of different colors. So I recommend just starting small, get one or two colors to start with, and the bottles are small, but don't be scared by that because you really don't need very much of it. And I tend to mix them a lot with water to make them go further. The water is also how my paintings have the style that they do. I do very thin, watery layers. You can kind of see how I build it up over time on the painting here. So another thing about how I work is right now you can see me building their skin tones and just kind of still really building out the depth of everything and keeping the parts. You have to kind of think of it as where's your light source coming from? What parts are going to be the brightest whites and what parts are going to be the darkest darks? And something I know a lot of artists are scared of is going too dark. And I have to say, you got to get over that. You need to get over that. Contrast is what makes things interesting. Always go darker than you think. And if you mess up, oh well. I mean, art is made to be messed up. I have to say, all of my paintings really are just mistake after mistake after mistake until it works suddenly. So I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm still building up the faces here, and I still haven't fully decided what direction I'm going yet in this piece. Sometimes when I paint, I just do it to escape reality. A lot of people have asked how I don't burn out, and I mean, that's really what it is. It's the opposite of a burnout for me. It takes me out of the things that have burned me out. And something I also thought, I've worked in commercial art for years, over a decade, in New York City, in apparel, very fast-paced design work. You don't really have a choice but to be creative 8 hours a day, at least 5 days a week in jobs like that. So I think that over those years, it kind of shaped my mind into being able to constantly be creative in a way. Except for those jobs suck the soul out of your body, and this art makes me happy. So there you go. So at this point, I have decided I want her to be blue. I think in the original reference, her dress is more of a white, kind of off-white with a pattern on it. Just kind of giving you an idea of how I work with my references, because I'm not copying them exactly. I'm using them as a guide, basically, especially for lighting. Sometimes I make up lighting. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to do depending on what I'm working on. There's some layering, some highlights. You can kind of see how I build up the floor a bit. I want to make sure the spots that are being hit directly with that light to be as bright as possible. And I'm doing this white right now, but it's not going to end up white. This is just a base color. Unfortunately, my lighting setup isn't super great, so this isn't the best footage of this, unfortunately. I'm trying to figure out the best way of filming. I'm still a little bit new at this stuff. Hopefully, eventually I'll have some nicer quality videos, but I appreciate you guys for sticking around while I'm still kind of young doing this work on YouTube. So also, as I'm going through this stuff, if you're watching, if you have any questions or anything you want to ask me, or topics you want me to talk about, or I don't know, anything you think of, just let me know. I would love to do more videos that are requested, because I'm not quite sure what everybody wants to see from me. I never really have been the best teacher, I would say. I just kind of do what I do, and I don't really know how to explain it to people, but I'm trying my best. So if there are very specific things you want to hear about, I will do my best to help you out with them. Around this point, you kind of see things are really starting to take form a little bit more. This is probably about, I would say, an hour or so into the painting. Maybe a little less than an hour, possibly. And just because this video's or just because this painting took me 4.5 hours doesn't mean I sat and painted for 4.5 hours straight. I do take a lot of breaks. I typically work in kind of short bursts, between 15 minutes to an hour sometimes, depending on my mood. I will take breaks and walk away from the painting. Sometimes you need to walk away and get a different perspective. Sometimes you want to walk away from it. You want to look at it from a different angle. I also take a lot of progress photos because I find that helpful as well. Something about looking at a picture of the art instead of looking at the art itself kind of separates it a little bit from the reality, and it helps me with my compositions and helps me decide where I want to begin placing different colors as I go through. I'll take a step back and be like, oh, okay, maybe this area needs a little more purple over here or something like that, or I need more contrast in the bottom right or something like that. And it's just somehow easier to see using a photograph. I know a lot of artists tend to work in sections. I cannot work like that. This is why my paintings are just layers and layers and layers. I've never been able to paint just, I don't know. I don't know how people do that. Just painting in a little section and moving out and having it all finished at once. Like, I don't know how that works. Okay, here, oh, you can see me giving a little bit of yellow. This is an interesting part of layering, because you can kind of tell. So he had white eyes, right? But I'm adding yellow because I don't really want them to be bright white. I want there to be some color layering. This primary magenta is a golden fluid color. It's one of my favorite colors right now that I've been using a lot. I love it for skin tones underneath the skin, and I think that's why he ends up so red in this painting, just because I really love that color, and I love it contrasting other colors. Some highlights. At this point, I'm still not really sure what direction I'm going. I'm kind of focusing on his face here because I'm just more focused on getting the portrait of him done, because I'll work on areas that I'm more sure about and then come back to ones later that I'm not as sure about, or maybe just need more time to think about the direction I want to go. So I'm deciding on a purple and blue kind of color scheme for her. I love the contrast of the yellow and the magenta and the purple and the blue together, and the white very cool on her and very warm on him. I can kind of see what way I'm going, and yeah, you can see here that so the I just made her yellow, right? Like that is something that like I was saying, my paintings are mostly just mistakes after mistakes until it looks right. I didn't like how she doesn't look good with the yellow, and I just was like, I don't know what direction I'm going, so I'm just gonna let her be yellow, and then I'll figure it out later. One thing I think about my technique that I can, I guess, recommend if you want to do a similar style is always use brushes that are too small for what you think you need, because that's how I work. I probably should be using larger brushes for a lot of the areas, or even totally different brushes, but I don't know. I just kind of go in there and smash everything together. Another thing is my palette that I use is called a Stay Wet palette. It is the brand, I believe, Masterson's. They do these kind of like these style palettes that you see here with lids on them. And this specific one is a small one, but it basically has a sponge on the bottom that you soak with water. You put that at the bottom, and then there's a special kind of paper that you soak in hot water, and then put the sponge in the bottom of the pan, put the paper on top, and you put your paint on top of that, and the paint stays wet for several days, which helps me a lot because I do work in kind of short bursts over several days, and you tend to waste a lot of paint. Acrylic paint dries out quickly, so it's been really helpful. Saved me a lot of money so far on paint, because I would typically probably be going through way more if I was letting it dry out every time I painted, because sometimes I'll be painting for 5 minutes and be like, I don't feel like painting right now, and before this palette, the paint would just dry out and I would have to start over again. But now I can just close it up, and it'll be fine for later, for when I'm more in the mood to paint. Okay, we're getting some more like detailed highlights, I would say, where I use yellows and whites to kind of brighten it up even more over the top. I use crimson a lot for my shadows. Something with the lighting that is sort of a technique and something that isn't necessarily the easiest thing to learn, but is something that is important, is the direction of your light. So you want your paint strokes to follow the light. You want it to feel like if you can see the floorboards, the light, my paint strokes are going in the direction of the floorboards. You want the walls are going down. The light is hitting his arm as if it's an arm. Like there's a curve to it. You have to remember the curves and the movement. It does take a lot of time to learn stuff like that, but I would recommend mostly working from life if you can. Just painting yourself, painting your foot, painting your hand. Use different lighting if you can. Set up a lamp. And you can work from photography as well, but I think working from real life is something that you have to do as a traditional artist or as a digital artist as well, to really get to feel human shape. And also anatomy classes is important as well. I would recommend that, or just studying anatomy is helpful. Here I'm kind of adding some texture to the floor, which is kind of like a moss, I guess is what I would say. And now you can see earlier that her dress was a lot brighter blue and purple, but I layered it over again with more white again, because that's just what I do. I just keep layering it until I go insane. Getting close to probably about the midway point of the painting. At this point, I think this one maybe took me 2 or 3 days. This one actually was a little bit quick for me, but I think I did it over 2 days, maybe 3 days. And now I'm doing a little bit more. At this point with my glazes, I do very wet, translucent layers that I blend together. Something important too is when you are doing layers and layers and layers, you want to make sure that all of your paint strokes, your brush strokes, are smoothed. You don't want to have very harsh, sharp edges when you're layering, because it'll be very noticeable. You'll be able to see it through, so you want to soften your edges. I mean, unless you're going for a specific style, which of course then try that. But if you're going for more of a soft look, more natural, you should make sure you soften up your lines. I think around here is when I'm noticing her skin color is just too close to his shirt, and it just looks like a big mess of pink and yellow right there. It's just too boring. Another reason I kind of jump all over the place on the board is I let areas dry, and because I work so wet that sometimes it does take a little longer for it to dry. It's also why I will walk away after painting for a while, because sometimes it's just a little too damp still and I kind of have to let it dry out for an hour or so. I don't want my paint to smudge because of how much water I use. It does smudge a lot, so unless the layer below is dry, it's just going to turn into mud. So I do have to wait between layers occasionally. now here's where things get interesting. This is where I decided that she was going to be a doll, a robot, something like that, with a pull string. So this is a part of my process that I don't really know how to explain to people. It's just more of I guess you could call it improv painting. I go into a lot of my paintings, or most of my paintings, without a fully fleshed out idea. I like to leave things open and with room to change. And this is just for my personal work. If I were working for a client, I would be doing something more, planned out. But in this case, when I'm just doing stuff for myself, I didn't know where this was going to go. I didn't really plan on it. And then, I don't know, sometimes I just think I'm just in my own head when I'm painting. And I just think a lot, and I come up with ideas a lot, and that's what I'm always doing. People have asked where I get my inspiration from and stuff, and really I'm just naturally, everything inspires me, everything. Movies, I love movies, I love horror movies, I love photography, and just people, and I'm inspired by lighting and just the nature and just pretty much everything. I'll see a random picture that inspires me, or just something, anything. I'm an illustrator. I think that's just my calling. I've always been an illustrator. I'm just a storyteller, I think, and the way I tell my stories is through art. I will recommend, if you don't know what to paint, you're not really sure, but you want to do an illustration, you want to work on something, look up like Grimm's Fairy Tales or something, Hans Christian Andersen story or something. They are classic stories for a reason. Disney stole them for a reason, a lot of those stories, so make up your own version of it. And I do like to write as well. I keep a lot of notebooks around. I write a lot of lists. I'm always thinking of things and always have ideas just floating around, because a lot of times I'll write stuff down and then I won't even think about it for a year, and then somehow I'll find it again a year later and I'll come up with a great idea based on that idea. So I think it's important to have just always being creative all the time. I know that can be draining for some people, so just do what works best for you. Don't force yourself to do it. You don't want to force it out, because otherwise it wouldn't be natural. I wouldn't be doing these paintings if I felt like I was being forced to do them. It just makes me happy. I believe at this point too, I think I was considering making her wooden. I think that was my initial idea, but again, with the skin color, I was realizing I have to change that. Another thing for photo reference, just walk around your town, your city, just take pictures. For my backgrounds, I love architecture as well as something I'm inspired by. I live in Brooklyn. There's a lot of really beautiful buildings and apartments and parks. Just take pictures of anything. Anything can be interesting. Just use it. It could be a window. It could be, I don't know, a playground or something. I don't know. I also have files and files of photo reference that I have collected over years from the internet, from my own personal photos that I've taken, things that inspire me. Sometimes when I just don't know what to do, I'll just look through my photo album of cool images and try to get inspired by that. Another thing I'm heavily inspired by, if you watch my shorts or any of my videos that I do on my social media, I love music. I am an amateur musician. I play guitar and trumpet and keyboard, and I've always liked music, and I go to a lot of concerts, or I used to when I was younger. Um, but music heavily inspires me. Sometimes I'm inspired by lyrics, sometimes I'm just inspired by the music, or while I'm working, I'm playing certain musics that kind of affect how I paint. Sometimes it's more upbeat, sometimes I'm more in a sad mood or something, you know, or sometimes I'm listening to a weird podcast. Something else I would recommend, just if you want to get really into traditional art and painting, and you're kind of either new at it or just not really sure what direction you want to go in, just try as many different mediums as you possibly can. Try gouache, try watercolors, try acrylic, try oil, um, try ink and markers and whatever you can. I mean, I know it can get expensive, but just whatever you can. Try as many different mediums as you can. I feel like my style is the combination of the 20 plus years that I've been painting in different mediums, all combined. Um, and also sculpture and stuff. That's another thing that I've done. Clay sculpting, that's also important. Okay, she's getting a little more purpley here. Getting some more highlights. This really, at this point, everything's pretty fleshed out to where it will end up. And I just basically keep layering the colors until I feel like it's right. It really, I don't know, at some point it just kind of clicks that it's done. Looks like at first I was going with a little bit of a green color here for her. That's why people are always so scared to make mistakes, because I'm like, bro, just layer it. Like, keep your layers thin and cover it up. You can do it. I will recommend, though, if you do want to work thin and you have a little bit of a hard time and you end up with like big chunks on your board, you can use a palette knife to scrape off and kind of flatten your surface a little bit. I like to keep my board as flat as possible, so if I ever end up with little paint lumps, you gotta scrape them off. Okay, it looks like I let it dry here a little bit, and then I'm going over it with some golden fluid blue. I can't remember which color that exactly is. I think it's like a neon blue color, but it's super thin. It's one of the super thin ones. and it's very, very thin. So you can see just how the blue layers over that purple. It looks really, gives it that depth that looks really cool to me. Getting some more texture in that moss floor there. Got some moss in the window as well. Trying to get my dark shadows in there. Definitely getting to the point where parts of it will be like fully finished at sometime soon. Yes, here I was originally going to make her more of a robot, a metal type robot, but I changed my mind. Some more blues in there. You can really see at this point that I'm mostly just glazing for the most part. Some mixing and blending and some darkening, but for the most part, just kind of layering my glaze colors. Some sunlight. Okay, you can see here where I'm doing this very watery blue glaze over her. I like to sometimes kind of fill in entire characters or just portions in like a glaze. Kind of gives it this odd like separated look that I like from, like, she's very different than he is. This area I'm doing some kind of, it looks a little like dry brush. I do some areas more very dry, textured, and then I go over it with a more watery texture over that, which is why it kind of gives it this like, it's multiple textures sort of together. Like I'll go back and blend the dry brush with some wet color. It kind of combines it. So anyway, I think that's it for this video. I'm just gonna let it run till the end, but I'm gonna say goodbye here. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments or just anything you want to know about, let me know. If you just want to know more about me or just whatever you want to know, I'll try my best to make videos. Yeah, I'm here to do stuff for you guys, so just let me know. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a great day.